Behind the bright studio lights, polished suits, and roaring applause of The Tonight Show, there existed a side of classic Hollywood most fans never saw. Johnny Carson's couch welcomed legends, icons whose faces defined the golden era, but not every guest arrived wrapped in charm and perfection. While millions watched from their living rooms, backstage crews whispered stories that never made it to air. Stories about uncomfortable moments, awkward silences, and an issue so human, yet so unforgettable, that it lingered long after the cameras stopped rolling. Johnny Carson was the master of composure. No matter who sat across from him, he smiled, joked, and kept the show moving. But according to longtime staff, producers, and insiders, there were nights when professionalism was tested, not by ego, not by scandal, but by something far more immediate. Under hot studio lights, during long tapings, certain golden era stars became notorious for leaving a lasting impression that had nothing to do with their talent. This video isn't about shaming legends or rewriting history. It's about revealing the untold backstage anecdotes that Hollywood insiders have quietly shared for decades. These were actors, comedians, and performers admired worldwide, yet even icons had flaws. Johnny Carson never exposed them publicly, but the stories survived in studio hallways, dressing rooms, and crew conversations. Tonight, we're pulling back the curtain on 9 golden era guests whose appearances on The Tonight Show became infamous among staff for one unexpected reason. The names may surprise you. The stories may shock you. And once you hear them, you'll never watch classic talk show clips the same way again. Let's begin. Number 1. Marlon Brando. Marlon Brando was more than just a movie star, he was a revolution. His performances changed Hollywood forever, inspiring generations of actors who came after him. But when Brando appeared on The Tonight Show, the legend that walked into the studio was very different from the polished image audiences expected. According to longtime staff members, Brando treated talk shows like interruptions rather than events. Grooming, preparation, and presentation were often the last things on his mind. Brando was deeply committed to his personal philosophy. He rejected Hollywood norms, avoided traditional routines, and openly dismissed expectations placed on celebrities. This attitude extended into his personal habits. Studio insiders later recalled that during his appearance, the atmosphere backstage became noticeably uncomfortable. Under the intense studio lights and during extended rehearsals, crew members reportedly struggled to remain professional as Brando showed little concern for basic hygiene. Johnny Carson, ever the gentleman, never acknowledged the situation on camera. He maintained his calm, charming demeanor, steering the conversation smoothly while sitting just close enough to keep the interview natural, but not a step closer. Producers allegedly shortened certain segments, not for timing, but to keep the taping moving without unnecessary discomfort. What made the situation even more striking was the contrast. Here was one of the greatest actors of all time, a man whose presence commanded respect, yet whose disregard for convention left a lasting backstage impression. Brando didn't care how he was perceived, his talent spoke for itself. And while audiences remember his words, those behind the scenes remembered something else entirely. This was the first name whispered when staff discussed the most unforgettable Tonight Show guests, and not for the reasons fans might expect. Number 2. Orson Welles. Orson Welles was a legend long before he ever stepped onto Johnny Carson's couch. The mastermind behind Citizen Kane had a presence that could fill any room, and sometimes, it filled more than just the space. Backstage stories paint a picture of a man whose brilliance was matched only by his eccentricity. Welles arrived at the studio carrying the weight of his genius, and staff quickly learned that brilliance came with challenges of its own. According to insiders, Orson often ignored conventional talk show etiquette. He would arrive hours late, carry heavy scripts, and insist on discussing topics in exhaustive detail, sometimes for hours. While audiences saw wit, charm, and storytelling brilliance, the studio crew noticed something else. Under hot lights and long shooting schedules, Orson's indifference to personal comfort reportedly became a distraction. His intense focus on performance meant basic grooming wasn't a priority, leaving those behind the scenes scrambling to maintain a professional environment. Johnny Carson, known for his composure, handled the situation with grace. On camera, Wells was magnetic, commanding every word with precision, humor, and insight. But behind the scenes, producers and stagehands quietly navigated the reality of working with a man whose talent was unparalleled, yet whose presence could be overwhelming in more ways than one. What makes Wells' Tonight Show appearance unforgettable isn't just his genius. It's the contrast between the legend the audience adored and the human quirks that made the taping a story retold by staff for decades. A true Hollywood icon, yet one who reminded everyone that even greatness has its unpolished edges. Number 3. Charles Bronson. Charles Bronson was Hollywood's embodiment of rugged masculinity. With his chiseled jaw, steely gaze, and intense on-screen presence, he became the symbol of toughness in the golden era. But behind the cameras of The Tonight Show, Bronson's rugged persona brought a different kind of challenge. According to studio insiders, the man who could silence a room with just a stare was not particularly concerned with charm or hygiene off-screen. Crew members recalled that Bronson often arrived directly from film sets, tired and unbothered by makeup or cologne. The hot studio lights, long tapings, and tight quarters only amplified the reality of his tough guy approach to life. While audiences saw charisma and quiet strength, those working behind the scenes sometimes struggled with the intensity of his presence in ways unrelated to acting. It became clear that Bronson's focus was entirely on performance, not on social polish or studio norms. Johnny Carson, the consummate professional, maintained his trademark charm and humor, steering conversations with ease despite the subtle backstage tension. Bronson never caused trouble intentionally. He simply lived on his own terms. And that authenticity, while admired on screen, created unforgettable memories off-camera for crew members, stories that would later be whispered in Hollywood corridors for decades. What made Bronson a legendary Tonight Show guest wasn't a scandal, a joke, or a mishap. It was the sheer contrast between his on-screen heroism and the unvarnished reality of the man backstage. A true Hollywood icon, Bronson reminded everyone that fame and talent don't always come wrapped in perfection. Number 4. Mae West. Mae West was Hollywood's ultimate icon of confidence and wit. Her sharp tongue, glamorous style, and bold persona made her unforgettable on screen, and equally memorable backstage at The Tonight Show. But while millions admired her charm, those working behind the scenes had a very different story to tell. According to longtime studio staff, Mae's presence was larger than life in every sense, and that included an aroma that could not be ignored. The star, famous for her lavish lifestyle and love for perfume, often arrived in heavy fragrance, perfectly coiffed and dressed to impress. However, under the intense studio lights and during long tapings, the combination of strong perfume, high-energy performance, and packed dressing rooms created a challenge for crew members. Insiders recalled that the air backstage was thick with her presence, making it both memorable and, at times, overwhelming. Despite this, Mae's professionalism on camera never wavered. She delivered lines with impeccable timing, flirtatious humor, and effortless charm that kept Johnny Carson, and the audience, hanging on every word. Johnny Carson handled her charisma with skill, balancing humor with admiration, making every segment smooth and entertaining. But behind the camera, staff learned quickly that working with a legend like Mae West meant adjusting to every larger-than-life detail she brought into the studio. Her Tonight Show appearance is still remembered as one of the most glamorous and aromatic moments in talk show history. Mae West reminded everyone that being unforgettable on screen sometimes comes with unforgettable challenges behind the scenes. Number 5. Jack Palance. Jack Palance was Hollywood's embodiment of intensity. His rugged features, deep voice, and commanding presence made him one of the most unforgettable actors of the golden era. But behind the cameras of The Tonight Show, Pallant's dedication to his craft sometimes created unexpected challenges for the crew. Insiders recall that he often approached interviews with the same seriousness and methodical intensity he brought to his film roles, which didn't always translate to the talk show environment. During tapings, Pallant would stay deeply in character, sometimes rehearsing lines or expressions quietly in the corner. While audiences saw a sharp, charismatic performer, those working backstage noticed that his focus sometimes came at the expense of comfort or hygiene. Under hot studio lights, the combination of long sessions and Pallant's unyielding dedication reportedly created an atmosphere that required careful navigation by producers and crew. Yet despite these subtle tensions, his on-camera performance remained flawless. Johnny Carson, ever the professional, handled Pallant's intensity with humor and grace, keeping the conversation lively and the audience engaged. What made Jack Pallant's unforgettable wasn't just his talent, it was the contrast between the magnetic, composed figure viewers adored and the raw, unfiltered dedication that played out behind the scenes. Staff still talk about those tapings, remembering both the power of his presence and the reality that even legends sometimes leave a lasting impression in unexpected ways. Number 6. Burl Ives. Burl Ives was the embodiment of warmth and charm in Hollywood's golden era. With his friendly smile, melodic voice, and approachable demeanor, he instantly put audiences at ease. But behind the scenes of The Tonight Show, even someone as beloved as Ives had quirks that made his tapings memorable in ways the public rarely imagined. According to longtime studio staff, his old-school habits sometimes clashed with the fast-paced, tightly scheduled world of late-night television. Ives reportedly maintained a relaxed approach to personal grooming, prioritizing comfort and authenticity over polish. While audiences saw a jovial, talented performer singing and sharing stories effortlessly, crew members noticed moments when his casual habits created challenges during extended rehearsals and hot studio tapings. The combination of bright lights, cramped dressing rooms, and long waits occasionally made working around Ives a delicate task. Yet, through it all, his professionalism on camera never wavered. Johnny Carson, with his signature charm, steered each segment seamlessly, ensuring that viewers saw nothing but Ives' genial personality. What made Burl Ives' appearance particularly memorable wasn't any scandal or misstep. It was the reminder that even the warmest, most beloved legends had human imperfections. Behind the applause and smiles, the crew experienced a side of Hollywood that was as real as it was unforgettable. Number 7. Zero Mostel. Zero Mostel was a force of nature. A Broadway titan known for his larger-than-life personality, outrageous humor, and unparalleled comedic timing, he commanded every room he entered. But backstage at The Tonight Show, Zero Mostel was just as unforgettable, though not always in ways audiences expected. According to studio insiders, his energy was explosive, unpredictable, and, at times, overwhelming under the hot lights and crowded sets of late-night television. Mostel's dedication to performance was legendary. He would arrive full of ideas, often improvising lines and gestures right up until the cameras rolled. While this created moments of pure magic on air, it also meant the crew had to stay alert and adaptable at all times. Extended tapings, intense studio lights, and packed dressing rooms often amplified the impact of his high-energy presence. Some staff described the backstage atmosphere as electric, chaotic, and unforgettable, a perfect reflection of Mostel himself. Johnny Carson, as always, navigated the situation with professionalism. On camera, he allowed Mostel's personality to shine, balancing humor and timing so that the segment flowed naturally. But behind the scenes, producers and crew quietly worked to manage both the practical and sensory challenges of hosting such a dynamic personality. Mostel's taping became one of those legendary nights that studio staff still recount decades later, a reminder that even comedy legends leave a strong, human mark beyond the spotlight. Zero Mostel's Tonight Show appearance showed the world his brilliance, but it also revealed the truth about Hollywood, greatness often comes with intensity, quirks, and unforgettable backstage stories that only insiders truly know. Number 8. Ernest Borgnine. Ernest Borgnine was the epitome of a Hollywood everyman, a beloved actor whose career spanned decades, from gritty dramas to light-hearted comedies. His approachable demeanor and natural charm made him a favorite both on-screen and off. Yet backstage at The Tonight Show, Borgnine's legendary charisma was paired with quirks that made his appearances unforgettable for studio staff. According to insiders, while audiences saw a warm, confident, and witty performer, those behind the camera experienced something a little more human. Borgnine was famously indifferent to Hollywood polish. He cared more about authenticity than appearance, often arriving at the studio in casual attire and with little attention to grooming. Under the bright lights and during long tapings, his relaxed habits occasionally created challenges for crew members tasked with keeping the set running smoothly. Unlike some actors who adapted quickly to the late-night environment, Borgnine maintained his own rhythm, leaving staff to adjust around him while still preserving the flow of the show. Johnny Carson, as always, handled the situation with subtle finesse. On camera, Borgnine's charm and humor were front and center, leaving audiences laughing and captivated. Behind the scenes, producers and stagehands quietly navigated the realities of working with a man whose talent was indisputable, but whose presence required patience and flexibility. Borgnine's Tonight Show taping remains memorable not for scandal or drama, but for the quiet contrast between the man the world adored and the behind-the-scenes reality of his unpolished, authentic self. It was a reminder that even Hollywood legends carry human quirks that leave lasting impressions long after the applause fades. Number 9. Jerry Lewis. Jerry Lewis was the king of comedy, a man whose energy and creativity defined an era of laughter. Audiences adored him for his slapstick antics, exaggerated expressions, and relentless enthusiasm, but behind the cameras of The Tonight Show, his presence could be just as overwhelming in unexpected ways. According to longtime studio staff, Lewis' frenetic energy sometimes made the backstage environment challenging, particularly under the hot lights and tight schedules of live tapings. While viewers saw a master performer effortlessly entertaining Johnny Carson and millions of fans at home, crew members noticed the human side of Lewis: the exhaustion, the constant motion, and the moments when hygiene and preparation took a backseat to pure performance. He was always rushing from one project to another, often arriving directly from shoots or rehearsals, leaving little time to adjust to the controlled chaos of a late-night talk show set. Despite these challenges, Lewis never compromised his performance. He gave everything on camera, making each segment a memorable mix of comedy, charm, and unpredictability. Johnny Carson, with his signature composure and humor, skillfully managed Lewis' energy, allowing the comedian's brilliance to shine while keeping the interview flowing seamlessly. Behind the scenes, staff quietly adapted to his rapid pace, ensuring that the show went on without interruption. Jerry Lewis' Tonight Show appearance is remembered as a perfect example of Hollywood talent meeting real human quirks. It highlighted a truth about legendary performers: no matter how adored or celebrated, even the brightest stars leave unforgettable impressions off camera, shaping the stories that insiders continue to share for decades. And there you have it, the 9 Golden Era legends whose appearances on The Tonight Show became unforgettable for reasons most viewers never imagined. From Marlon Brando's intense disregard for convention, to Orson Welles' larger-than-life eccentricity, Charles Bronson's rugged focus, Mae West's unforgettable glamour, Jack Palance's methodical intensity, Burl Ives' old-school habits, Zero Mostel's explosive energy, Ernest Borgnine's unpolished authenticity, and Jerry Lewis' unstoppable comedic frenzy. Each of these stars left a lasting impression behind the scenes that staff still talk about decades later. Johnny Carson, the consummate professional, handled every guest with charm, patience, and grace, never revealing the backstage realities to millions of viewers. His brilliance was not only in hosting but in allowing each star to shine while keeping the show smooth and entertaining. These stories remind us that even the most legendary performers are human, with quirks, habits, and moments that make them unforgettable in ways audiences rarely see. Hollywood's golden era was filled with glamour, talent, and stories that captivated the world, but the truth behind the camera adds another layer to history. The tales of these 9 guests show us the fascinating contrast between polished public appearances and the messy, human reality behind the lights. Talent lasts forever, but first impressions, good or bad, linger in ways that only insiders fully understand. So next time you watch a clip of Johnny Carson with one of these legends, remember, the magic we see on screen is only part of the story. Behind the laughter, applause, and camera smiles, there was a world of unforgettable backstage moments that helped make Hollywood history what it is today.